The gavel slammed down like thunder, and I watched my son's wife smirk as if she'd already won. The courthouse smelled of old wood and broken promises, but what made my stomach twist wasn't the musty air, it was the way she looked at my grandchildren like they were prizes in a game only she knew how to play. "Your Honor," Jessica's lawyer said, his voice smooth as silk and twice as slippery, "my client has been the primary caregiver for these children since birth." I gripped the wooden bench until my knuckles went white. Primary caregiver. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. Before I go further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and if you're hooked already, a like and subscribe will keep these stories coming. The whole mess started 3 weeks ago on a Tuesday that began ordinary enough. I was stirring oatmeal for 8-year-old Emma and 10-year-old Jake when Jessica waltzed into my kitchen like she owned the place. Her heels clicked against my linoleum floor, click, 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 each step a tiny declaration of war I didn't know was coming. "Leona," she said, not even bothering with a good morning, "we need to talk." I kept stirring. 40 years of teaching had taught me to read trouble in a person's voice, and Jessica's tone was dripping with it. "The children are eating breakfast." "About that." She perched on my counter like a bird of prey, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the granite. "Things are going to change around here." Emma looked up from her bowl, those big brown eyes, my son Michael's eyes, wide with confusion. "Grandma Leona, why does Mommy sound mad?" "Eat your breakfast, sweetheart," I said, though my own appetite had fled the moment Jessica opened her mouth. Jake, always the protector even at 10, moved closer to his sister. Smart boy. He could sense the storm coming too. Jessica waited until the children finished eating and scattered to get ready for school before she struck. "I've been thinking about our arrangement." Our arrangement. As if the past 8 years of raising her children while she built her career had been some casual agreement between strangers. "What arrangement would that be?" I asked, though I was already bracing for impact. "You babysitting for free." She said it casual as discussing the weather, but each word landed like a slap. "It's not really fair to you, is it? Being stuck with kids that aren't even yours." The coffee mug in my hand trembled. Not from anger, not yet, but from the sheer audacity of it all. "Those children are my flesh and blood, Jessica." "Are they though?" She tilted her head, studying me like I was some fascinating specimen under a microscope. "Because last I checked, grandparents don't have any real rights. You're just the babysitter who happens to be related." The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of children's laughter upstairs. My children. The ones I'd picked up from daycare every day for 8 years. The ones whose homework I'd checked, whose tears I'd dried, whose bedtime stories I'd read until my voice went hoarse. "Michael left them in my care," I said quietly. "Michael's been dead for 2 years, Leona." Her voice turned sharp, cutting. "I'm their mother. I get to decide what's best for them now." Dead for 2 years. As if I needed reminding. As if I hadn't been the one holding those babies when we lowered my son into the ground. As if I hadn't been the one picking up the pieces while Jessica threw herself into her work, leaving earlier and coming home later each month. "What exactly are you saying, Jessica?" She slid off the counter and smoothed down her pencil skirt. "I'm saying I think it's time for the kids to spend more time at home. With me. Their actual parent. You work 12-hour days. I work hard to provide for my family." The way she said family made it clear I wasn't included. "But I've been offered a promotion. More money, better hours. I can finally be the mother they deserve." The mother they deserve. The words echoed in my head as I watched her check her reflection in my toaster, fixing her lipstick like she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of my life. "I'll still need you sometimes," she continued, "but more like a regular babysitter. You know, when I have plans or need a night out. I'll pay you, of course. Minimum wage seems fair." Minimum wage. For raising the children she'd abandoned to grief and ambition. "And if I refuse?" Her smile was all teeth, no warmth. "Well, that would be unfortunate. For everyone involved." The threat hung in the air between us like smoke. I could hear Emma's voice upstairs, asking Jake if he'd seen her favorite hair ribbon. The same ribbon I'd bought her last Christmas, the one she wore every day because it made her feel pretty. "I need to get the children to school," I said finally. "Of course. But think about what I said, Leona. Think hard." She left the same way she'd arrived. Click, 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 each step taking her further from the wreckage she'd left behind. The drive to school was quiet. Emma hummed in the back seat, completely unaware that her world was shifting beneath her feet. Jake stared out the window, but I caught him watching me in the rear-view mirror. "Grandma Leona," he said as we pulled into the school parking lot. "Yes, honey. Is Mommy trying to take us away from you?" The question hit me like a physical blow. 10 years old, and he'd heard enough to piece together what his mother hadn't had the courage to say directly. "Why would you ask that, sweetheart? She talks to her friend Sandra on the phone sometimes. I heard her say that you were getting too attached. That we needed to remember who our real family is." Real family. As if blood was the only thing that mattered. As if love and sacrifice and showing up every single day counted for nothing. Emma unbuckled her seatbelt and leaned forward between the seats. "But you are our real family, Grandma. You're the one who makes us lunch and helps with homework and reads us stories." "Yeah," Jake agreed, his voice fierce with 10-year-old indignation. "You're more real than she is." I turned around to face them both, these beautiful children who become my whole world, and something inside my chest cracked clean open. "Listen to me, both of you. No matter what happens, I will always love you. Always. Do you understand?" They nodded, but I could see the fear creeping into their eyes. Children know when the adults are scared, even when we try to hide it. After I dropped them off, I drove home in a haze. The house felt too big, too quiet without their voices filling the rooms. I walked through each space, the kitchen where I'd taught Emma to crack eggs, the living room where Jake and I built elaborate Lego cities, the den where we'd watched countless Disney movies on rainy afternoons. It was in the den that I found the photo album, wedged behind the couch cushions. Emma must have been looking through it again. She loved the pictures of her and Jake as babies, always asking me to tell the stories that went with each image. I flipped through the pages slowly. There was Jake at 6 months, his chubby fists wrapped around my fingers. Emma taking her first steps toward my outstretched arms. Both of them covered in flour after helping me bake Christmas cookies, their faces bright with joy and mischief. Every major milestone. Every first and last and everything in between. Not one single photo of Jessica during those early years. She'd been there, technically, but always in the background, always with one foot out the door. My phone rang, startling me out of my memories. The caller ID made my heart sink. Jessica Mitchell. "I hope you've had time to think," she said without preamble. "I have." "Good. Because I've already enrolled them in after-school care at their school. Starting Monday, they'll stay there until I can pick them up. No need for you to worry about them anymore." After-school care. Where they'd sit in a cafeteria with dozens of other children, doing homework at folding tables under fluorescent lights instead of at my kitchen island where I could help them work through the hard problems. "Jessica. I know this is hard for you, Leona, but it's what's best for the children. They need to bond with their actual parent, not continue this unhealthy attachment to their grandmother." Unhealthy attachment. The clinical phrase made my skin crawl. "I'll pick them up from school today to explain the changes. You don't need to worry about it." The line went dead, leaving me alone with the silence and the photo album full of memories she was trying to erase. But Jessica had made one crucial mistake. She'd forgotten that I'd spent 40 years teaching children, watching them, learning to read the truth in their eyes and voices. She'd forgotten that some bonds can't be broken with paperwork and legal threats. Most importantly, she'd forgotten that children always know who really loves them. I closed the photo album and reached for my phone. If Jessica wanted to play hardball, she was about to learn that this 75-year-old grandmother had spent decades dealing with bullies. And I'd never lost yet. The first call was to my lawyer, Margaret Chun, who'd handled Michael's estate. The second was to my neighbor Patricia, who'd been documenting Jessica's frequent absences with the sharp eye of a retired police dispatcher. The third was to my former student, David Martinez, who now worked for Child Protective Services and owed me more favors than either of us could count. By the time Jessica picked up my grandchildren from school, I'd already started building the case that would bring them home. The war had begun, and Jessica Mitchell was about to discover that she'd picked a fight with the wrong grandmother. The next morning, I stood at my kitchen window watching Jessica's car disappear down the street with my grandchildren inside. For the first time in 8 years, they wouldn't be coming to my house after school. The silence pressed against my ears like water. My phone buzzed. A text from Jake, sent from Emma's tablet. Grandma, we miss you already. Love you. My chest tightened, but I didn't have time for tears. Margaret Chun was coming over in an hour, and I had work to do. I spent the morning gathering evidence. Every school form I'd signed as emergency contact. Every medical appointment I'd taken them to. Every parent-teacher conference where I'd sat alone because Jessica was too busy to attend. The paper trail painted a clear picture, one Jessica apparently thought no one was paying attention to. Margaret arrived precisely at 10, her silver hair pulled back in the same no-nonsense bun she'd worn for the 30 years I'd known her. We'd been in book club together before she became my lawyer, back when my biggest worry was whether we'd finish our novel selection on time. Show me everything, she said, settling her reading glasses on her nose. I spread the documents across my dining room table like a war map. Margaret's expression grew grimmer with each piece of evidence. This is substantial, Leona. But we need to be realistic about what we're up against. She looked up at me over her glasses. Biological parents have tremendous rights. Even absent ones. She's not absent. She's neglectful. There's a difference. Can you prove neglect? I thought about Jake's hollow eyes when Jessica forgot his school play. About Emma crying herself to sleep when her mother missed her birthday party for a work dinner. About the countless nights they'd asked why Mommy didn't want to read them stories anymore. I can prove what matters, I said. Margaret made notes on her legal pad. We'll need witnesses. Documentation of Jessica's absences. Evidence that you've been the primary caregiver. I have witnesses. Good. But Leona, she paused, choosing her words carefully. Even if we can prove you've been caring for them, that doesn't automatically grant you custody. Jessica is their legal guardian. Then what do you suggest? We file for grandparent visitation rights first. Establish your relationship legally. Then, if Jessica continues to interfere with your access to the children, we can escalate. Visitation rights. As if my grandchildren were strangers I needed permission to see. How long will that take? Months. Maybe longer. I stared at the papers scattered across my table, each one a small piece of the life Jessica was trying to steal from me. Months. While Emma and Jake sat in after-school care wondering why Grandma Leona had abandoned them. There has to be another way. Margaret's expression softened. Sometimes the system isn't fair, Leona. I wish I could promise you different. After she left, I sat alone in my too-quiet house, anger burning in my chest like acid. The afternoon stretched ahead of me, empty for the first time in 8 years. No homework to supervise. No snacks to prepare. No little voices asking me to help them reach something or fix something or explain why the sky was blue. My phone rang. The school's number. Mrs. Haverford? This is Janet from the main office. We have a situation with Emma. My heart stopped. What kind of situation? She's refusing to go to after-school care. She's insisting that you're supposed to pick her up. She's quite upset. I was already reaching for my keys. I'll be right there. Actually, we've called her mother. She's on her way. The line went dead. I stood in my hallway, keys in hand, helpless. For 8 years, I'd been the person they called. Now I was nobody. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with another text from Jake. Emma is crying. Mom is mad. She said we can't have your phone number anymore. Then nothing. I called Margaret back, but got her voicemail. I called the school, but they wouldn't put me through to the children. I called Jessica's number, but it went straight to voicemail, a cold professional message that gave no indication she had a heart beating in her chest. By evening, the silence in my house felt alive, crawling across my skin like spiders. I found myself setting 3 places at the dinner table before remembering. I made enough pasta for a family before realizing I was cooking for one. The pasta went in the garbage. I wasn't hungry anyway. I was loading the dishwasher when I heard it, the soft scrape of a key in my front door. My heart leaped. Maybe Jessica had come to her senses. Maybe she'd brought the children back where they belonged. But it wasn't Jessica who walked through my door. It was Jake, still in his school clothes, his face streaked with tears. Jake. I dropped the dish towel and ran to him, pulling him into my arms. He felt so small, so fragile. How did you get here? I walked. His voice was muffled against my shoulder. Mom locked Emma in her room because she wouldn't stop crying for you. She said if we mentioned your name again, we'd be in trouble. I held him tighter, fury and relief warring in my chest. You walked all the way here? That's 2 miles, sweetheart. I know the way. You taught me. I had taught him, during our weekend adventures when we'd walk to the park or the ice cream shop. I'd made it a game, learning street names, counting blocks, teaching him to be aware of his surroundings. I'd never imagined he'd use those skills to escape from his own mother. Where does she think you are? In my room. She told us to stay there until morning. She went out with her friends to celebrate her promotion. His voice turned bitter, too bitter for a 10-year-old. She said now that she doesn't have to worry about us bothering you anymore, she can finally have a social life again. Bothering me. As if loving them was a burden instead of the greatest joy of my life. I led Jake to the kitchen and made him a grilled cheese sandwich, watching as he devoured it like he hadn't eaten all day. Maybe he hadn't. Jake, where's Emma now? Still locked in her room. Mom said she needed to learn that throwing tantrums wouldn't get her what she wanted. He looked up at me with those serious brown eyes. But Grandma Leona, Emma wasn't throwing a tantrum. She was just sad. Of course she was sad. 8 years old, and the person who'd been her constant was suddenly gone without explanation. I need to call your mother, I said, reaching for my phone. No. Jake grabbed my wrist. Please. She'll just make me go back, and she'll be even madder. Can't I just stay here tonight? Please? Looking at his tear-stained face, I wanted nothing more than to let him stay forever. But I also knew that keeping him without Jessica's permission would only make things worse. Sweetheart, I have to call her. She needs to know you're safe. She doesn't care if I'm safe. She cares if I'm quiet. The words hit me like a slap. This was what Jessica was teaching them, that their feelings didn't matter, that their needs were inconveniences. I was reaching for my phone when it rang in my hand. Jessica's number. Where is he? She demanded without preamble. He's safe. He's with me. Bring him home. Now. Jessica, we need to talk. We have nothing to talk about. You have no right to my children. I have every right to make sure they're safe and cared for. Her laugh was sharp, ugly. Safe? You think teaching a 10-year-old to wander the streets at night is keeping him safe? He came here because he was scared and needed comfort. The same comfort I've been providing for 8 years. The same interference you've been providing for 8 years. Her voice turned vicious. You've poisoned them against me, Leona. Made them think they need you more than their own mother. I've never said a word against you to those children. You didn't have to. Your very existence is criticism enough. The line went quiet, and for a moment I could hear something that might have been pain in her voice. But then she spoke again, and her words turned my blood to ice. Bring him home now, or I call the police and report you for kidnapping. Kidnapping? He's my grandson. He's my son. And you're not family anymore. She hung up, leaving me staring at the phone like it might bite me. Jake had been listening, his face pale with fear. I don't want to go back, Grandma Leona. Please don't make me. I knelt down beside his chair, taking his small hands in mine. Listen to me very carefully, sweetheart. Do you remember what I taught you about being brave? He nodded. Sometimes being brave means doing things that scare you if they're the right thing to do. That's right. And sometimes being brave means telling the truth, even when it's hard. I pulled out my phone and called the number David Martinez had given me earlier. He answered on the second ring. David? It's Leona Haverford. I need your help. 20 minutes later, David was sitting in my living room, his official CPS badge clipped to his shirt. He was one of my favorite former students, quiet, thoughtful, with a moral compass that never wavered. Tell me what's happening, Mrs. H, he said, using the name my students had called me for 40 years. I told him everything, while Jake sat beside me on the couch, his small body pressed against mine for comfort. David took notes, asked gentle questions, and watched Jake with the trained eye of someone who'd seen too many scared children. Jake, David said finally, can you tell me about your home life? What's it like living with your mom? Jake glanced at me, and I nodded encouragingly. It's okay, sweetheart. Tell him the truth. It's lonely, Jake said quietly. Mom is always working or on the phone or going out. Emma and I make our own dinner a lot. And when we try to talk to her, she says she's too tired or too busy. What about when you're sick or scared or need help with something? We call Grandma Leona. But Mom says we're not allowed to anymore. David made more notes. Jake, if you could choose where to live, where would it be? Without hesitation, here. With Grandma Leona. Why? Because she loves us. Not just says it, but shows it. She makes time for us and listens when we talk and knows what makes us happy. His voice grew stronger, more certain. She takes care of us when we're sick and helps us with homework and reads us stories and makes us feel safe. David's pen stopped moving. In the silence, I could hear my heart beating. Mrs. Haverford, he said finally, I'm going to need to speak with Emma as well. And I'm going to need to see their living conditions at Jessica's house. What does that mean? It means I'm opening an investigation. My phone buzzed. Another text from Jessica, you have 10 minutes to bring him back, or I'm calling the police. I showed David the message. He frowned, then pulled out his own phone. Mrs. Mitchell? This is David Martinez, from Child Protective Services. I understand you're concerned about your son's whereabouts. He's safe, and I'd like to arrange a time to meet with you and discuss your family situation. I couldn't hear Jessica's response, but David's expression grew colder. Ma'am, I need you to understand that threatening to call the police on a grandmother who's caring for her grandchild is not going to reflect well on your parenting. I'll be in touch tomorrow to schedule our meeting. He hung up and turned to me. She's angry. What happens now? Now we make sure these children are where they belong. Jake looked up at me, hope flickering in his eyes for the first time all day. Does this mean we can stay with you? I smoothed his hair back from his forehead, the same way I'd been doing since he was a baby. It means we're going to fight for what's right. But as I tucked him into the guest bed that had always been his room, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jessica wasn't done with us yet. And I was right. At 3 a.m, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, 2 police officers stood on my porch, their faces grim in the porch light. Ma'am, we need to speak with you about a kidnapping report. The police officers stood on my porch like twin harbingers of doom, their badges glinting under my porch light. Behind them, Jessica's car idled in my driveway, her silhouette rigid behind the wheel. Ma'am, we received a report that you're holding a minor against his guardian's wishes, the taller officer said, his voice professional but not unkind. I pulled my robe tighter around myself, keenly aware that I was 75 years old, standing in my nightgown, facing down the law. That child is my grandson. He came here because he was scared. That may be, but his mother has legal custody. We need you to release him to her care. From upstairs, I heard Jake's bedroom door creak open. His voice drifted down, small and frightened. Grandma Leona? What's happening? Jessica climbed out of her car then, marching up my walkway like she owned the place. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared. She'd clearly been drinking at whatever celebration she'd been attending. There he is, she said, pointing past me toward the staircase. My son, who this woman kidnapped from his own home. I didn't kidnap anyone, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. He walked here because you've been poisoning him against me for years, Jessica snapped. Officers, I want her arrested. The shorter officer stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. Ma'am, before we do anything, we need to understand the full situation. Is the child in immediate danger? No, I said quickly. He's safe, he's fed, he's loved. He's been manipulated, Jessica countered. This woman has been undermining my authority as his parent, making him think he belongs here instead of with his real family. I am his real family, I said, and for the first time, my voice cracked. Jake appeared at the top of the stairs then, his hair sticking up at odd angles, his dinosaur pajamas wrinkled from sleep. Grandma Leona? Why are the police here? The taller officer looked up at him, then back at Jessica. Mrs. Mitchell, have you been drinking tonight? Jessica's face flushed. I had 1 glass of wine with dinner. That's not illegal. No, but driving under the influence is. And taking custody of a child while intoxicated raises concerns. I'm not intoxicated, she protested, but her slight sway said otherwise. The officer turned to me. Ma'am, here's what's going to happen. The child can stay here tonight, given the circumstances. But tomorrow, we need this sorted out through proper legal channels. Jessica's mouth fell open. You can't be serious. He's my son. And she's his grandmother, who appears to be providing appropriate care. Given your current state, I think it's best if we revisit this tomorrow when everyone's had time to think clearly. After the police left and Jessica peeled out of my driveway in fury, I found Jake sitting on the stairs, his small body shaking. Am I in trouble? He whispered. I climbed up to sit beside him, my knees protesting every step. No, sweetheart. You're not in trouble. Is Mom going to take Emma and me away from you forever? The question hung in the air like smoke. I wanted to lie, to promise him everything would be okay, but 40 years of teaching had taught me that children deserve honesty. I don't know, I said finally. But I'm going to fight for you with everything I have. He leaned against my shoulder, and I felt the weight of his trust, his love, his desperate need for stability. I'm scared, Grandma Leona. I know, baby. I'm scared too. The next morning brought Margaret Chun to my door at 7 a.m., looking grimmer than I'd ever seen her. Leona, we have a problem. Jessica filed an emergency petition for a restraining order. She's claiming you're interfering with her parental rights and that you've alienated the children from her. My coffee cup shook in my hands. What does that mean? It means until we can get before a judge, you could be ordered to have no contact with Jake and Emma. No. The word came out stronger than I felt. Absolutely not. I've scheduled an emergency hearing for this afternoon. But Leona, you need to prepare yourself. The law heavily favors biological parents. Even neglectful ones? Even absent ones? After Margaret left, I called David Martinez. His voice was tight with anger. Mrs. H., I tried to conduct a welfare check on Emma this morning. Jessica refused to let me in the house. Said I needed a warrant. Can you get one? I'm working on it. But these things take time, and time isn't something we have a lot of. Time. Such a simple word for something so precious and elusive. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 2 p.m. I spent the morning gathering more evidence, photos, school records, medical documents, anything that might show the court who had really been raising these children. I was organizing papers when my phone rang. The caller ID made my heart stop. Emma's tablet. Grandma Leona? Emma's voice was so quiet I could barely hear her. Emma, sweetheart, where are you? In my closet. Mommy doesn't know I have the tablet. She took Jake's phone away. Her voice was thick with tears. Grandma, I'm scared. She's been yelling all morning about how you're trying to steal us. Oh, sweetheart. And she keeps saying mean things about you. But they're not true, are they? You do love us, right? My heart cracked clean in half. More than anything in this whole world, Emma. More than the sun and the moon and all the stars combined. Then why can't we come home to you? Home. Such a simple word, but it held everything that mattered. I'm working on it, baby girl. Can you put Jake on the phone? There was shuffling, whispered voices, then Jake's voice. Grandma? Mom locked us in Emma's room. She said we're not allowed out until she figures out what to do with us. Locked them in. Like prisoners in their own home. Are you hurt? Either of you? No, but we're hungry. She didn't give us breakfast, and it's past lunchtime. I closed my eyes, rage burning through my veins like fire. Listen to me, both of you. In a few hours, I'm going to court to fight for you. There might be a judge who asks you questions. If that happens, I need you to tell the truth. Can you do that? What kind of truth? Emma asked. About who takes care of you. Who helps you with homework and makes your dinner and tucks you in at night. Who you feel safe with. That's easy, Jake said. You do all that. What about Mommy? Silence. Then Emma's small voice. Mommy works. And goes out. And talks on the phone. She loves her job more than us, Jake added with devastating honesty. Oh no, sweetheart, that's not. I started to defend Jessica automatically, then stopped. Why was I protecting someone who was hurting my grandchildren? The truth, Grandma Leona, Emma said solemnly. You said to tell the truth. You're right, baby girl. Always tell the truth. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet kitchen, surrounded by evidence of a life built around loving those children. Their artwork still hung on my refrigerator. Their favorite cups sat in my cabinet. Their beds upstairs were made with sheets they'd picked out themselves. This wasn't just their grandmother's house. This was their home. At 1:30 p.m., I walked into the courthouse wearing my best navy dress and my fiercest expression. Margaret met me at the security checkpoint. David Martinez will be testifying, she said as we walked toward the courtroom. And I have some character witnesses, your neighbor Patricia, Emma's teacher Mrs. Davidson, Jake's soccer coach. What about Jessica? She'll have her lawyer. And probably a compelling story about a grieving mother trying to rebuild her relationship with her children. We entered the courtroom, and I saw Jessica for the first time since the night before. She looked perfectly put together, professional blazer, hair in a neat bun, subtle makeup that made her look young and vulnerable. Next to her sat a man in an expensive suit who looked like he ate grandmother's rights for breakfast. But it was the two small figures sitting in the front row that made my breath catch. Jake and Emma, dressed in their best clothes, holding hands and looking terrified. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 50s, called the court to order. This is an emergency hearing regarding the custody arrangement of Jake Michael Mitchell, age 10, and Emma Claire Mitchell, age 8. Mrs. Mitchell has petitioned for a restraining order against the children's paternal grandmother, Leona Haverford, claiming parental interference and alienation of affection. Jessica's lawyer stood first. Your Honor, my client is a devoted single mother who has been trying to rebuild her family after the tragic death of her husband 2 years ago. Mrs. Haverford has systematically undermined my client's authority, encouraging the children to disrespect their mother and creating an unhealthy dependence on herself. He painted a picture of a manipulative grandmother who couldn't let go, who'd inserted herself into a family where she didn't belong. According to him, I was the villain in this story. Then Margaret stood. Your Honor, Mrs. Haverford has been the primary caregiver for these children since their father's death. She has fed them, clothed them, taken them to medical appointments, attended school functions, and provided stability during the most traumatic period of their young lives. The evidence will show that Mrs. Mitchell has been largely absent from her children's daily care, leaving them in Mrs. Haverford's care for up to 12 hours a day. The testimony began. David Martinez took the stand first, describing his investigation and his concerns about the children's welfare. Patricia testified about Jessica's frequent absences and late nights. Mrs. Davidson, Emma's teacher, talked about how I was the one who came to school events, who met with teachers, who knew about Emma's struggles with math and her love of reading. Then Jessica took the stand. Your Honor, she said, her voice breaking just slightly, I've been working hard to provide for my children since my husband died. Yes, I've relied on my mother-in-law for childcare, but that doesn't make her their parent. I'm their mother. I love them more than life itself, and I'm trying to create a stable home for them. Her lawyer asked leading questions that made her sound like a devoted mother fighting against an interfering in-law. She talked about her new promotion, her plans to spend more time with the children, her desire to heal their family. She was convincing. I'll give her that. But then Margaret stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Mitchell, when was the last time you attended a parent-teacher conference? Jessica's confidence flickered. I work during school hours. When was the last time you took either child to a doctor's appointment? Mrs. Haverford usually handles those things. When was the last time you cooked dinner for your children? We often eat out, or Mrs. Haverford. With each question, the picture became clearer. Jessica was their biological mother, but she hadn't been their parent in any meaningful way. Mrs. Mitchell, last night you called the police to report your son as kidnapped. Where had you been that evening? I was celebrating a promotion with colleagues. Were you drinking? I had a glass of wine with dinner. Just one glass. Jessica's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Finally, the judge looked toward Jake and Emma. I'd like to speak with the children. My heart hammered against my ribs as both children walked to the witness stand. They looked so small, so vulnerable, holding hands as they faced the judge. "Jake and Emma," the judge said gently, "I need to ask you some questions. Can you tell me who takes care of you day to day?" "Grandma Leona," Emma said immediately. "What does that mean, exactly?" Jake spoke up. "She makes our breakfast and packs our lunches and helps us with homework. She takes us to the doctor when we're sick and reads us stories at bedtime." "What about your mother?" The children exchanged glances. "Mommy works a lot," Emma said diplomatically. "She's very busy," Jake added. "If you could choose where to live, where would that be?" Without hesitation, both children said, "With Grandma Leona." "Why?" Emma's voice was clear and certain, "Because she loves us best." The courtroom fell silent. In those 4 simple words, my 8-year-old granddaughter had summarized everything that mattered. Jessica's lawyer tried to do damage control, suggesting the children had been coached, that they were too young to understand complex family dynamics. But the judge held up her hand. "I've heard enough," she said. We all held our breath. "Mrs. Mitchell, the evidence suggests that while you are the biological mother of these children, Mrs. Haverford has been their primary caregiver for a significant period. The children have expressed a clear preference for remaining with their grandmother, and multiple witnesses have testified to her excellent care." Jessica's face went white. "However," the judge continued, "biological parents have significant rights under the law. I cannot simply transfer custody based on the children's preferences alone." My heart sank. "Therefore, I am ordering a full custody evaluation to be completed within 30 days. Until that evaluation is complete, the children will remain in Mrs. Haverford's care, with supervised visitation for Mrs. Mitchell." Jessica shot to her feet. "Your Honor, you can't." "Mrs. Mitchell," the judge's voice was sharp, "your children walked into this courtroom holding each other's hands because they were terrified. They are 8 and 10 years old, and they shouldn't have to choose between adults who claim to love them. But they have made it very clear where they feel safe and loved." She looked directly at me then. "Mrs. Haverford, these children are fortunate to have you. The court recognizes the bond you've formed and the care you've provided." Then she addressed both of us. "I strongly encourage you both to consider what is truly in these children's best interests. Not your interests. Not your rights. Theirs." As the gavel came down, Jake and Emma ran to me, throwing their arms around my waist. I held them tight, breathing in the scent of their hair, feeling their hearts beating against mine. "Are we going home now, Grandma?" Emma whispered. "Yes, baby girl. We're going home." Jessica stood frozen at her table, watching her children cling to me like lifelines. For just a moment, I saw something raw and broken in her eyes. Pain. Loss. Maybe even understanding. Her lawyer was talking urgently in her ear, but she wasn't listening. She was watching Emma show me a drawing she'd made in her pocket, a picture of our family, me, Jake, Emma, and their daddy watching over us all from a cloud above. "Jessica," I said quietly. She looked at me, her carefully composed mask slipping. "They're not prizes to be won," I said. "They're children who need love and stability and consistency. If you really love them, think about what that means." For a moment, I thought she might say something. Might acknowledge the truth we both knew. Instead, she turned and walked out of the courtroom without another word. 3 weeks later, Jessica withdrew her petition for custody. Her lawyer called Margaret to arrange a meeting, not to fight, but to discuss what was truly best for Jake and Emma. We met at my kitchen table, the same place where this all began. Jessica looked different, smaller somehow, less armored. "I've been thinking about what the judge said," she began quietly. "About what's best for them, not what I want." Jake and Emma were at school, but their presence filled the room anyway, their artwork on the refrigerator, their backpacks by the door, their laughter echoing in the memories held by these walls. "I love them," Jessica said, and for the first time, her voice was completely honest. "But you're right. Love isn't just a feeling. It's showing up. And I haven't been showing up." "You could learn," I said gently. "It's not too late." She smiled sadly. "Maybe not too late for a relationship with them. But too late to be their primary parent. That's you, Leona. It's been you all along." We worked out a visitation schedule, dinners once a week, alternating weekends, holidays shared. Jessica would get help for her workaholism and learn to build a real relationship with her children. I would support that relationship while continuing to provide the stability Jake and Emma needed. It wasn't perfect, but it was what was best for two children who deserved better than adults fighting over them like possessions. That evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at me with those serious brown eyes. "Grandma Leona? Are you our real mom now?" I smoothed her hair back from her forehead, the same gesture I'd made thousands of times before. "I'm your grandma who loves you. That's enough, don't you think?" She smiled, the first truly peaceful smile I'd seen from her in weeks. "That's everything." From across the hall, Jake called out, "Good night, Grandma Leona. Thank you for fighting for us. Thank you for fighting for us." As if I'd had any choice. As if loving them wasn't as natural and necessary as breathing. "Good night, my loves," I called back. "Sweet dreams." I stood in the hallway between their rooms, listening to them settle into sleep, and thought about Jessica's words in court, "You're just the babysitter." She'd been wrong about many things, but she'd been especially wrong about that. I wasn't just their babysitter. I wasn't just their grandmother. I was the person who showed up. Every day, in every way that mattered. And sometimes, that's everything. The house settled around us, full of the quiet contentment of a family safe and loved and home where they belonged. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, we had won the only victory that truly mattered. We had each other. And that was enough. That was everything.